Good afternoon. Speaking correctly into the mic this time so everybody can hear us, and into live can hear us as well. Fit like. How you doing? Who's your use? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us at the Freeport and SEZ Community Group, Peterhead. That mic seems to, either it must be me. Pardon me, I'm an amateur at this. It's so wonderful to see everybody here. It's great to see the local community coming out to find out a bit more of what's going on in Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen City. Because Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen City is part of the Special Economic Zone. It's not widely known, as we found out. I'm Lynn Hawkes. I'm a member of Salvo North East team. We also have in our presence the Salvo campaign group for Freeports and SEZ.
You're part of it.
I'm sorry, I'm also part of it. I've just been told? No, no. I keep forgetting that bit. We have a number of members of the Salvo Freeport team in the audience, and also...
Recording in progress.
Aha, David's fine.
Dave.
Afternoon, David.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Is that... Can we a wee bit more volume for David? Let's try that. Well, I've still got the player away a wee bit. I'll let him do the technical stuff. Housekeeping. There's no fire drill due today, so if you hear the fire alarm, it is a fire, and we have to take precautions and head for the exits. The exits are where you come in. There's also more exits through the curtain and at the back. Convenience facilities, toilets to my left, and also round the corner as well, male and female.
I've got David at maximum volume. So.
Okay, David, can you say hello?
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Maybe we can turn it up when he's...
Well, whatever.
It's not coming out the TV. It's coming out the here.
Right. We'll get a minute, David. Also, we're pleased that our friends from Indie Live are with us. They're over in the back there. Indie Live are great friends. They've been to a lot of our meetings. They record it, they stream it. So we're welcome, especially they've come all this distance, as have the Freeport group come all the way from the Central Belt, all over. So let's welcome the Freeport group. There's a lot of crucial matters kicking about right now. A lot that the public are not aware of fully. A lot of things are going through by the government, forced on the councils, with tight budgets, etc. So this afternoon is really to raise the awareness of what's going around. You'll notice in Peterhead anyway, when you drive into Peterhead, you see the link getting built, you know, for the community, for the electricity that's being pushed down south. You'll hear more about that. I'm not going to hold you on to that because I know there's people who know exactly all these things, and also about the economic zone, which is David's speciality. We are all volunteers, and we survive on donations. Can I ask if anybody's got any chance they could maybe help us cover the cost of this meeting this afternoon, and also maybe support Indie Live with donations too, because they've obviously got a lot of expense going all the way up here and travelling all over Scotland. We did invite our elected representatives from Aberdeenshire, Aberdeen City, all the MPs, all the MSPs in the area. Is there any councillors here? Derek, of course. Right in front of you as well. We didn't get very many replies, and of the ones that we did get a reply, they were very polite and said they couldn't come for a variety of reasons. And that seems to be mirrored for every event that we hold. We always invite the elected representatives to give us their view of what's going on. Unfortunately, they don't want to come along up to now. Maybe that'll change, hopefully one day. But we really love to discuss it. Some of the elected representatives that have appeared, they found these meetings very enlightening because they hadn't had any idea what was going on. That's elected representatives. I'm not blaming them, it's just the way things are. There's a lot of secrecy. So this afternoon is to raise the awareness for you. Then you can maybe chat with your friends, your family, and we can all possibly get more interested in these topics because it's going to affect everybody. The energy, economic zones. So we've got 2 speakers for you this afternoon.
3 actually.
Oh, 3. Are you speaking?
Did you not know that?
No, I
said
did.
here from a fun.
I had. Ignore me, I'm just having a senior moment. We have 3 and I can't count.
Lee insisted.
Lee insisted.
Aye.
Right. Okay. I'm just a pawn in this little game. Sorry, people. I'll be fired from this job, thankfully. Right, we have 3 speakers. We're still going with David first? Excellent. David, welcome. Can I ask you to...
When we were doing, you're going to make to Colette and David.
Right, I'm going to give the mic to Colette and you 2 can have a chat.
Thank you. David, could you say hello again, just see if the volume's any better?
Hello, everybody.
No, you're still low. Not too sure why, because...
I've got mine at full.
Right, is there anything higher in yours?
You're coming in louder now.
No. Is there any way we can put a mic to the speaker in your laptop? By any chance, Bill?
That's what we're doing.
Right.
That's how you're talking to.
Alright.
So I've turned the volume up here. I can't do it anymore.
Is it volume up on your laptop?
You maybe have to come in a bit so you can hear him. Okay, while we're doing that, I just want to say that the table that's directly in front of us, the table that you just came in, there's lots of literature there, and anything that's in the plastic pockets, you're more than welcome to help yourself and take the printed copies away with you. We've got a vast amount of information from where we started from, really, with the Freeports Did You Know leaflets, right through to the special economic zones. There's stuff there regarding freedom of information that we've got as well, so there's some leaflets on that. Right through to the energy side of things, that we're looking at all the renewable energy that is basically getting flung up around Scotland all over the place. So there's a vast amount of information there that you're more than welcome to take away. Any better for the volume, David?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Am I still low?
You're quite low.
Yeah.
We can hear it. You can hear him, right? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we'll just get started. So, David, I think we're just going to have a kind of general chat just now, and you can fill us in, and we'll just kind of almost tig-tag along with each other. So, first of all, I think when you lose something, you really have to kind of go back and retrace your movement from where you started, and to try actually find the thing that you lost. And we're obviously trying to find ways of progressing this campaign as well. So I think what I want to do just now is actually go back to where we first started, and that was when we first heard about the Freeports. Now, it was Izzy, who's sitting at my left-hand side, who kind of dragged me into all of this. I didn't really know what I was getting involved in. I certainly do now. So we were talking about, first of all, the two Freeports that we've got in Scotland, the Cromarty Firth and the Firth of Forth. And obviously then we heard about the special economic zones. And with that, the correspondence that we were getting in the network that we were doing, especially on social media when we started the campaign, people were getting in contact with the likes of myself and other of the team, and that's how we got to know David. So David's been doing a lot of research for many years now, probably more years than David probably likes to even think about at the present moment. But it's valuable information and research that he's been doing over the years. Now, David's in the Hague, and we've all heard about Freeports that have happened and that still are in the EU countries. We did have Freeports and economic zones right up until Thatcher that brought them in, right up until David Cameron scrapped them in around about 2011, 2012. So, because it wasn't really showing any economic growth to United Kingdom. So, David, now that we went back to Freeports, and we'll obviously come up to modern day times, but what's the difference between the Freeports that are in the EU, the Freeports that we had here in the UK, now to the Freeports that we've now got in Scotland?
Okay, so maybe I should get my voice a little bit louder than I would normally. Okay, so Freeports actually don't exist in the EU as Freeports. They are publicly owned, so they are called ports. Okay, and they also have special economic zones there. There are 82 special economic zones in the EU, but the difference between them and the 86 free zones in the UK.
Yeah, that's better, thanks David.
Is it better?
Yes.
I don't have to shout so much now, right?
Keep shouting.
Okay, so the difference between EU ports, they're not called free ports in the EU, they are ports because a free port is privately owned, okay? So a port is publicly owned. The special economic zones, of which the ports are part of in the EU, are strictly regulated to prevent state aid, which is public money, from being given to companies setting up in the zones for profit motives. The reason why that is illegal is because if you don't have that, then the single market, which is a harmonious structure to prevent corporate exploitation of all kinds of things, that would create a unlevel playing field. That's a simple thing. The single market in the EU is a unified, harmonious structure that keeps corporations and all their kind of their constant drive for deregulation. It keeps them at arm's length. That's really important. So when Brexit came along, state aid rules were the first rules that were ejected from Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss's programme of the nationwide rollout of 74 SEZs and 12 Freeports across the UK. So that meant 48 SEZs in England, 8 Freeports in England, 18 SEZs in Scotland, 2 Freeports in Scotland, 8 SEZs in Wales, and 2 Freeports in Wales. So that's the main fundamental difference, is state aid rules to stop corporations exploiting all kinds of regulatory things that are set up in the EU. That was their main kind of exit. It's in the name, Brexit. Exit is the kind of exit from, we could say, democracy. Okay? We all know the EU referendum vote was kind of severely compromised with dark money and all kinds of shenanigans. But that's where we are today. Okay?
So David, you're talking about public money, so that's the public purse money. I take it then with the Freeports and the special economic zones, the Scottish Government and the UK Government are paying into these. Roughly how much in each of these Freeports and special economic zones is the public purse paying for? Sorry,
Okay.
investing, because that's the word, they're
Yeah.
investing.
For economic growth, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 12 Freeports. Each Freeport in the UK gets 25 million seed capital per port. That totals 300 million per Freeport. That is public money. There is seed capital can also be private, but the seed capital the government are referring to is public money, okay? 300 million, 25 million per Freeport in the UK. Now the SEZs, each SEZ, there are 74, they get 160 million per SEZ. The total of that is 11,840 million pounds of public money going to the SEZs, okay? There it is.
So for that investment, what are the people that live in these zones, whether it's a Freeport or an SEZ, such as we are in here in Aberdeenshire, the North East Special Economic Zone? The two main ones, just for everybody, that we've been concentrating at the present moment is Glasgow SEZ, which covers 8 local councils, and the one in the North East. And so we're bang right in the heart of the Aberdeenshire with the North East. What really are the people that are living in these zones really expecting to see back from their investment? What is the actual agenda for the special economic zones?
The special economic zones rollout, and you'll see this on the council's websites, you'll also see it on the government's website, is economic growth, innovation, meeting net zero targets, and huge job creation. That's what their goals are, but the realities are just completely different. If you look on the government's website and you see there's even a little section on the history of special economic zones under Margaret Thatcher. Now, you know, they always have these massive projections about things like job growth. The actual creation of jobs, the result was underwhelming. It was very disappointing. It was a fraction of these kind of inflated targets for jobs that were given. So the weird thing is they saw those mistakes happen, and I can tell you, I've just gathered more statistics as of yesterday. The failure of this is even worse than before. So I'm just going to dig into my notes. Give me a second. And the reason why the public don't know so much about special economic zones is because they are extremely complex. And I've come to believe that their complexity is part of their kind of camouflage. Okay? So I'm going to just go to my statistics on Scotland. Just give me a second. Okay, so with Scotland, Scotland's 2 Freeports, so the job targets were failed. And they were failed by a statistic of something like a shortfall of over 95%. And let me just find that. 96% even. So you've got about 933 jobs, which is 2/12 of the 5,600 jobs which were expected to be created. The combined target of the jobs in Scotland is something like 8,000, so there's a shortfall of 96%, and even further from Cromarty Firth's 11,300 projection. The special economic zones, the details of that aren't actually out yet, but the projections are equally disappointing. So you've got something like 80% of job displacement, which happened in the 2011 Work Foundation report. So going back to Thatcher and Cameron, they were suggesting a very similar trend that you see today. The comparable displacement rate was about 20% of the targeted jobs that might be genuinely new. So that meant the estimated target of 90,000 jobs across Scotland's 18 SEZs would mean about 18,000 new jobs by 2024. So that is a shortfall of 80%. So remember, you've got the Freeports jobs and you've got the SEZs jobs. So what Freeports, 96% shortfall, the SEZs, 80% shortfall. Okay?
So David, again, with the work that we've been doing and the research, and Izzy always talks about that I do the number crunching, unfortunately. We've been looking into each public meeting that we give. We always look at the local area and the unemployment rate and the employment rate and the jobs that were promised to get contracts, whether it was in a Freeport area or a special economic zone. So at the very beginning, when we were looking back at doing research, and we were looking back at 2022, 2023, because again, this hasn't happened just overnight. This has been long-term planning to do this. There's been plenty of articles that between the Cromarty Firth, Freeport and the Firth of Forth, they were promising 75,000 jobs between both Freeports. 75,000 jobs. Then in the Glasgow Special Economic Zone, we were in Glasgow last October, and again we were looking at all the statistics, and in that Glasgow Economic Zone cost £1.2 billion of investment between the 8 local councils, but they were promising 29,000 jobs. It had been running for nearly 10 years, and they'd only produced about 5,000 jobs at that point. But those 5,000 jobs might have only been part-time contracts, low-paid jobs. They don't give great data and statistics, they just kind of round it up. So when you look at just the two Freeports and even just the Glasgow Economic Zone, you're talking over 105,000 jobs that they're promising. Well, up until December of 2023, coming into January 2024, because they don't give statistics and data very quickly, there was only just under 104,000 people unemployed in Scotland. So we were going to eradicate every single person that was unemployed by these two Freeports in Glasgow Economic Zone. We were looking into the North East Special Economic Zone, and I think between myself and Izzy and Lee, we tried desperately to try and find out what the Special Economic Zone job opportunity was, and we can't find any concrete data or any number for us to actually give you what they're promising for the Special Economic Zone. So David, it's drastically declined from the initial reports in 2022-2023. And again, it's not local jobs. Sometimes they're getting brought up from elsewhere or even abroad because they're just bringing people over because of the incentives. Can you tell us a wee bit more about the employers' incentives that they come up here for the Freeports?
The incentives, gosh. I mean, you can see that on all the kind of glossy brochure websites. They go on about high-skilled work in tech, in life sciences, even in kind of education, like university zones and university affiliation. But the kind of figures and the data we're getting back is that they're inherently low-skilled jobs, right? It's just completely, pathetic. That's all you could say. It's an absolute disaster.
Now, regarding employment and legalities on the Freeports and the Special Economic Zones, they're basically self-governed. It's not like the EU. So you're looking at things like private companies and able to do really a lot of what they're wanting regarding employment law, health and safety, national insurance, business. They get their business tax relief, etc. So there's a lot of incentives for them to come and make a lot of profit. But for the local area, they're not really actually getting to see any of that benefit locally, are they?
No, and part of the kind of tax, I call them tax holidays for the companies setting up in the zones. First of all, they are 10 years in duration, the tax holidays for the companies. And it's things like business rates relief, it's things like stamp duty, it's things like national insurance contributions for employers are waived. And I think that's for the first 36 months. So what happens is because the employees still have to pay their national insurance, right? It means that council taxes and things will go up as a result of that. And the other thing people don't seem to know about special economic zones and the model that the UK is using here, these are basically tax havens now. That's why you have tax holidays, and that's why companies chase these tax breaks and set up in the economics in all these free zones. So you've got like it's a known pattern. This has been going on for quite a while with special economic. I mean, especially since 2008 with the financial crash. A lot of corporations, they kind of pooled their resources. They all got together across the world and they said, yeah, we need to do something else now. And that's when people, before that, they took the advice, they looked to the, advice of special economic zones in China, like in Hong Kong and Singapore and places like this. So the Thatcher government, along with Geoffrey Howe, they said, yeah, we'll bring Singapore on Thames, we'll bring it to Scotland as well. So you get then something called, and this is what Rachel Reeves is doing now, she's advocating job displacement as a serious kind of, tactic, which is known to go wrong. It means that people move from one area and they go into, one of these special economic zones for work, and that leaves the area behind, the one that they left, also falling into, into ruin, basically. So you've got this, if you've got this huge amount of free zones, what is going to happen to the surrounding areas and communities that aren't part of those free zones? Because every zone, obviously, you have to have public services, everything working. We can see they're already not working already, and councils are basically collapsing. I don't know about councils in Scotland. I don't know what kind of pressures they are under. But in England, you've got 192 councils that have higher debt rates than Birmingham. Birmingham is host to 6 special economic zones, and you've probably heard about the bin strikes, right, and all the rubbish everywhere. I don't know if you've also heard about another thing that is digging into housing and property in general. It's called compulsory purchase orders. So in Birmingham, 6,000 tenants are now under what's called a mass compulsory purchase order. The Labour government last October, they published a new document. It's 192 pages long, and it is all focused on compulsory purchase orders. And they apply to business, agriculture, and residential properties. So that's what you're seeing now happen in Birmingham. And you're going to see this happen across the whole of the country. And you might see the odd report in Private Eye, about just how terrible the profit and wage share is in a place like in Teesside, which is the flagship SEZ Freeports. The split of profit share to wage share is 90 to 100 in favour of the private sector. Now, the other key thing to know, and this is where things like freedom of information requests and secondary legislation really start to kind of contradict one another. First of all, freedom of information, you're getting denials of those, you're getting, or heavily redacted replies coming back. This is because secondary legislation, which means zero parliamentary or public scrutiny, is embedded in the free zones rollout across England, Scotland and Wales. Okay? So that makes an effect of the Freeport entity, the local council, the local enterprise partnership. We are now seeing patterns where if you want to ask the council something, they'll say, oh, take it up with the Freeport entity. And the Freeport entity will bounce it back. So what happens is, it's like a ping pong effect, that the public, you know, they're just seeing, they're completely cut out of all the decision-making processes. Their questions are just rebuffed. The FOI requests, the ones that do come back, because I would say over 80% of them are rejected outright. Yeah, this is what happens when corporations want to just make, their next step is to make serious incursions into public infrastructure. And this is where the rabbit hole gets really deep. You've got companies like, well, there's 700 corporate lobbyists were in a meeting around the same time of Labour's publication of that compulsory order document. And it's companies like BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard, Palantir, and they are doing what is called, they have something called an infrastructure imperative. The infrastructure imperative, that is everything. That is all public services, everything. That is healthcare, that is the police force, that's you know, cleaning your streets, that is in education, that is in your data, in the NHS, of course. That's all going. That's all going to hell. So what do? This is why we have to network outside of Scotland and across Wales and England. You have to start joining up these kind of campaigns we're doing, because the patterns are almost identical across, you know, the entire country. So the point I wanted to make about Teesside Freeport, if you remember earlier I said every Freeport gets 25 million. Well, Teesside, they've already spent 560 million of taxpayers' money. And remember, the profit, the so-called profits that are coming back, it's the public sector gets 10% of that. And the land that was sold in Teesside was put up for £1 an acre. You can see all this in Private Eye. The thing with Private Eye is that they've been gunning for Mayor Houchin and what's her name, Musgrave and Corney, the business associates there, and they're doing a great job of that. But they're forgetting about the rest of the ports and the SEZs in the rest of the country. I mean, I'm in touch with one of the writers on there. I keep trying to badger them to, you know, up the ante and apply this to the rest of the country. But until things like, you know, outlets like Private Eye and the independent press come on board and start really getting together, amassing the data and putting it out there and trying to get the MSM to pick up on it, because that's where you have to start, basically kind of even lower than Private Eye, like, you know, the independent media. I mean, I can tell you, I'm going to write 3 more articles for the Canary. They asked me a couple of weeks ago to write on the free zone, the whole UK free zone rollout, and they admitted that they've been ignoring this for too long. And that it's great that our data and our research is starting to kind of come through, you know, but my worry is with the 25-year licenses on these zones, and the kind of corporations who were involved, which are basically asset strippers who've decided to move into public infrastructure now, they're too far ahead already. So this is why we really need this kind of nationwide, on the streets campaigning and getting out there and making noise about it. And luckily I've got a really good kind of list of what we have to do. And if I can break it down for you, you have to, each of us now, we have to do things together. No one can do this on their own. You've got to demand transparency. You've got to force the publication of the statutory instruments that govern Freeports and SEZs, you've got to kind of email, say, Cromarty's board. You've got to say, meet us and explain what is going on and pressure them for accountability, especially on these kind of, there's another problem. There are 9 designated tax sites in the 2 Freeports in Scotland. 9, yeah, you know that? Well, that doesn't account for the tax sites that could appear in the 18 special economic zones. Now, on average per zone, you get 3 tax sites. So if we just look at that conservatively, the amount of tax sites in the 18 special economic zones in Scotland could go up to 54, right? So then what do you do after that? You've got to flood, you've got to also play the game that they're playing. I mean, Steve Bannon, you've heard of Steve Bannon, right? He said you've got to flood the zone with shit. You've got to turn around what they're doing and put it back on them, and you've got to make people take notice. You've got to all submit mass freedom of information requests. You've got to insist that they expose the kind of patterns. I mean, that is starting to happen on a small scale in Plymouth and in Devon with a guy called Jim Funnell. His account on Twitter is fantastic. He literally shows you the correspondence. He's had the same results that local MPs and Freeport representatives, they don't turn up to the meetings. And I was on a meeting with George Monbiot from The Guardian at Plymouth, and they're saying the same thing is happening there. So you've got to mobilise the allies, you've got to engage the Greens, you've got to kind of win over the SNP. The problem with the SNP is one person, her name is Kate Forbes. Kate Forbes signed a letter of agreement with Westminster agreeing to the rollout of the 2 Scottish green Freeports, right? So that's insane. So I don't know if that has been publicised at all in Scottish media, Kate Forbes' role, and that you can see on the government's website there's a little section on the SCZ's page. It says that the devolved administrations, they are under no obligation whatsoever to adopt the SCZ's rollout. They weren't, but Kate Forbes miraculously went off and signed off on it. You can even read her letter. I've got that printed on my Twitter feed. I can post it to you guys again. The other thing you need to do when you write these FOIs, and if you're going to start emailing your councillors, you've got to reframe the narrative. You've got to just basically say these free ports and free zones, they're a kind of a shell game of public loss and corporate gain. You can use the 4th Freeport as this 85% profit share as evidence of that. You've got to advocate alternatives, and my suggestion there would be demand that Scotland's and England and Wales's Freeports and SEZs align with the EU's rules on state aid. Then you can rejoin the European Union. There's another rather serious thing I wanted to mention, and it is about Scottish independence, and that because of these rules on state aid, and because of the whole kind of nightmare of crisscrossing over into different zones, and this is why there's so many of them, to make things as complicated as possible, not just for rejoining the EU, but the independence question as well. So independence doesn't, if Scotland goes independent, you're still going to have those same free ports and special economic zones. They're not going to change overnight. But the kind of complexity involved of getting rid of the secondary legislation of what's embedded in those free zones, you're going to need lawyers, you're going to need a lot of help with that. So this is what I keep uncovering. It's like a kind of a very complex layered graph, a layered graph of all these kind of intersections on top of one another. And while I'm trying my best to kind of point these things out, and making comparative data and things like that, I'm just one person. I need your help. We need to join up with everyone who on these campaign groups across the country and share the data. Now, the next thing that I'm doing is 3 more articles for the Canary, and I'm also going to be publishing something in a book called about Breakdown and Collapse. This is going to be published, a really good publisher called Routledge. It's going to be published next spring. A bunch of us authors and historians and academics, whatever you want to call us, artists, are going to bring together that this breakdown and collapse is not just, okay, my contribution is about the zone, the free zones, but other people are going to be talking about the disability aspect with all the disability cuts. They're going to be talking about the environmental consequences. So this is the whole package of what free zones do. They are infrastructural in that they take the problem of big government and they basically outsource it to corporations. They hand over the power to corporations, and then they start to cut up the country. They carve it up into these separate zones. Now, the most easiest way I can explain it is, you know, when you have a big problem, they say, how do you solve it? You break it down into manageable pieces. This is how the special economic zones in the UK are working. They're taking the problem of big government and outsourcing it to corporations and ring-fencing territories. That's why there's so many of them. There it is. Maybe you should talk now, because I've just said so much and I'm always, overloading.
You were on a roll. Don't know if this mic's working.
Push it down and up. A lot better.
Still, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to just take it back a wee bit for a couple of minutes, then we'll either go to Q&As, or do you want to go next? Right, okay, that's fine. You just don't want to talk for very long, sure you don't. So I'm going to bring it back a wee bit. So first of all, we were talking about the local councils. So what's happening in England, Freeports and the special economic zones have been going on for probably at least 5 years. And David's already mentioned Teesside, which the majority of people will have heard of. But what happens in England, the more privatisation happens in England, the less public money we get back in our Barnett Consequentials, our block grant from Westminster. Because the less public money they're using down there, we don't get that. We get a percentage of what they pay out down in England. So we are affected in Scotland by the free ports and the special economic zones that they have got and the privatisation that they now have in England. And as David just rightly said, the councils are really struggling. Some of them have actually went bankrupt. They are using compulsory purchase orders to get money to their local councils. But our local councils are already struggling, and I know we've got a local councillor here, and hopefully he will give us some information that he knows about in this area shortly. But as far as the data that we've gathered, every single council area that we've been in has a funding deficit that they're actually having to look at cutting their budget at the public services. And who uses the public services more? It's the most vulnerable people in society. So the most vulnerable people are getting affected the most by this. So what happens in England severely affects Scotland. And again, now that we've got the free ports and the job opportunities aren't coming up to Scotland, they're being displaced. We're not seeing this economic growth. And one thing that I did say at our last meeting last month in Burnt Island is that over the years, no matter what the government was down in Westminster, they talk about economic growth. There has been no economic growth UK-wide, as they put it, UK-wide. There hasn't been. So the free ports that they've had in England for all these years aren't given the economic growth that they're promising. Now, here in Aberdeenshire, there is a very low unemployment rate. And again, we can't find the particular statistics to say exactly how many jobs are promised. But there is only a relative amount, a small amount of people. It's about between 2 and 3%, and that's the latest data that I've got, between 2 and 3% of people in Aberdeenshire that are classed as unemployed. So that the jobs that they're actually promising, there isn't enough people in that area actually to fill these jobs. So when you think about even Glasgow, for example, that had promised 29,000 jobs, there was under 17,000 people unemployed in Glasgow at that time. So if they did actually hit that target of 29,000 jobs, where were they going to get the other 12 plus thousand people to fill those jobs? Where were they going to stay? Where's the infrastructure? Because there's still the biggest amount of homelessness and very badly, poorly maintained housing in Glasgow. So that all has to be addressed first. And I think the money that could be going into these special economic zones from the public purse could actually be going into the local councils and actually looking after the residents. Now here in Aberdeenshire, and this is definitely going, here in Aberdeenshire, there is about just, again, the statistics that we've got, the local data says that there's, this is definitely going, the battery's going, there's under 6,000 children that are living in relative poverty. Now, that means that the 6,000, just under 6,000 children who are living in relative poverty, because of such a battery's going in this, have you got extra batteries? Right, so that's better, thank you. So the under 6,000 children that are living in relative poverty, because of the low unemployment rate, that means that they're actually living in households that are employed poor. So it must be low income jobs. Things just don't add up. The jigsaw pieces aren't coming together. Now, in Aberdeenshire, we've got a vast amount of economic growth companies, industries already, such as your Aberdeen Angus beef, your fishery. There's medical, scientific, all these things that are actually bringing economic growth to the area. So we are actually wondering, David, why the likes of Aberdeenshire, who have got the oil and gas, who have got the economic growth for the Aberdeen Angus, the beef and the fishery, etc., did it really actually need to get put into a special economic zone if it's already got that prosperity and a low unemployment rate already?
Not at all. There was no need for it at all, which makes you see that this is about something much bigger. It's absolutely to do with Brexit. Like I said earlier, that with the state aid things, state aid rules to extricate away from that and allow like rampant deregulation to come into the UK. It's about the asset classes basically taking over. It is about moving into things like, say, Scottish beef or Scottish resources, and basically installing a kind of monopoly over those things. But it's also about importing, say, if this trade deal with the US goes through, it's also about importing, terrible food standards and food products that are banned in the EU. I think the wind farm thing was going on way before the Freeports was set up. They were also being built in the EU. So I think it was Professor Alf Baird who did a really good article called "The Freeports Ruse," and he explained that the green tag is just something to make them sound more palatable to the public, and that the wind farm rollout did not need any special kind of SEZ Freeport status to do that. Absolutely not. So it's just one big Ponzi scheme for corporations to come in, take public money, get the tax breaks, and run off with it. Those figures we mentioned earlier.
Well, the dog agrees with you anyway, so the dog agrees. I think we've given them an awful lot of background information. So, David, are you happy if we just kind of go to Q&As and then we'll bring Izzy regarding the energy side of things just now?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions?
Hi David, it's Pat Lee from Salwell, Lanarkshire. Been listening intently, and it's really scary.
Yeah.
Can you tell me again, what would be the effect of reducing revenue streams to local councils on the councils and their council tax requirements?
Well, you know, earlier we talked that the profit share between the private sector and the public sector, if we take the examples of Teesside, it's 9 to 10 in favour of the private sector. So this is all about just extracting resources and extracting public money. So corporations don't, you know, it'll mean your council taxes will go up. I mean, on top of the whole kind of infrastructural, you know, disasters that are going to happen and are happening in, say, Birmingham, for example, and also in Teesside with things like the dredging. There's nothing. These zones are designed to completely collapse public infrastructure and profit from that collapse.
Could I also ask you, can you give me the government total investment support, that's the numbers, and do you have any figures on how much private investment capital has been secured?
This is where it also gets very difficult. I know for sure that the public investment, the government spending, taxpayers' money is 11,840 million for the special economic zones. That's 160 million per zone. The money for the Freeports is 25 million per Freeport. That's 12 Freeports. That's 300 million. But remember, we said earlier that with Teesside, and Private Eye covered this, that they've already spent over 560 million of taxpayers' money. And the National Audit Office, which wanted to step in and investigate based on their findings, they wanted to investigate the whole country's rollout of the programs based on their audit on Teesside. And there's a House of Commons report, I've posted it loads of times, that Rachel Reeves then refused to grant the National Audit Office permission to carry on their investigations into the rest of the country. And who set up the report on the Teesside fiasco? It was Michael Gove. So you're going to get these patterns of kind of independent audit committees instead of national audit committees. And whose interests are those for? Well, specifically the corporations. Like a corporation like BlackRock, they've got their own in-house audit committee, and that's a company called Deloitte. Deloitte are based in Dubai. And now it doesn't take much. You just kind of make the links. Go and look at BlackRock on. You can look at their website. Better still, look on Wikipedia, and you see the breakdown of all their kind of. Basically, every single corporate crime you can think of under the sun has been committed by BlackRock, and they've got their own audit committee to hush things up. And that's you know, they've had cases where Deloitte have been exposed for falsifying figures and falsifying data, and they've been fined for it. But a company like BlackRock, they basically own everything. BlackRock have just announced 80% stakes in 3 freeports in England. That's Felixstowe, Harwich, and Thamesport. 80% stakes in a deal that is around 22 billion. We believe it was pushed by Donald Trump. You've got to wonder why then a BlackRock focusing on, you know, those 3 quite closely aligned freeports in and around London. News of trade, of global trade. But when you have a company like BlackRock who've got really high stakes in it, their only interest is their shareholders. You can read the website. You can read about their infrastructure imperative. They said the public are crying out for us to come in and take over public infrastructure. BlackRock, their financial portfolio doesn't yet include what they refer to as nature's assets. Nature's assets, they're treating it now as a tradable commodity on the stock market for the UK. Okay?
David, could I go back to just where Pat asked about the funding, and could again we're talking about local councils and how much the public money is going into these. Could I then pass over, if that's okay, to possibly the councillor that we have here today and ask him what he knows about the special economic zone here and Aberdeenshire Council's contribution to that and what's actually happening here in the area?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say to you,
Can I just ask who you are?
my name's Derek Davidson, but I'm actually an Aberdeen City Councillor.
Okay, that's
Yes. So,
Sorry, can you just put the mic up?
okay, so my involvement in this, I've had no involvement in this whatsoever from Aberdeen City point of view, but obviously from listening to the meeting today, I intend to go back now and ask some questions to see what people know in our council.
Okay, thank you. I just, again, this is what we are finding, David, here in Scotland at all the public meetings that we've been doing since 2023. And obviously you've been attending meetings down in England as well. The common denominator is, as Len said at the very start, we invite every single local representative, whether it's a councillor, an MSP or an MP, to come and actually speak to the attendees who are mainly their constituents. So they really should be here to represent them and update them with information. Sadly, we don't get that the coverage either from the media either. So we really are doing all the legwork, and obviously David does a hell of a lot more. And again, we're covering Scotland. David said earlier on about networking. We do network because, as I said earlier on, what affects England does majorly affect us here in Scotland with our because of our devolved Parliament and the matters surrounding our block grant. So it really does matter what is actually happening in England. Now, regarding the compulsory purchase, what we're finding with our local councils, with Scots law, and again we're slightly different here because we do have Scots law, believe it or not, it is not a UK constitution, it's a Scottish constitution, that the councils don't actually own any of the assets. They are just managing them. It's us that own all the assets, but in their website they say that they own them, and that probably then gives them the right to sell off public buildings or assets for if they're running out of money. But I think moving forward just now, because I do want to bring in, as in I'm conscious of the time, and then we can do more Q&As, but I want to hear from Izzy as well. So we've been doing this for 2 years now. We've covered Freeports and special economic zones in the majority of our meetings. But at the end of last year, we were starting to understand more and more about what's actually happening regarding the asset stripping. It's not the asset stripping just of our land and the community and the economic benefits that we could possibly be getting. But we noticed more and more what was happening with the renewable energy. Now, nobody's saying that we don't want clean energy, etc. We're not saying that at all. What we're actually discovering is all the pylons, the wind farms, the solar farms, battery storages, everything is getting landed in Scotland's doorstep. But not one of us are actually getting the benefit of it. So it is another form of asset stripping. Plus, we're not actually seeing the job opportunities that could possibly be here because they're all privately owned companies. So they're bringing up their own people, and it could be, as David said, there's companies registered in Dubai and all over, so they could be bringing people up to Scotland, and it's not local people that are getting the jobs. We talked about BlackRock. BlackRock are already buying up land in Scotland and putting down solar farms, etc. So it's happening all over. And again, as I say, there's lots of literature there to actually show you exactly what's already in construction, what's operational, and what's already still in the planning. And believe me, it's astronomical. It's mind-blowing. So I'm going to pass you over to Izzy, and she's going to talk a wee bit more about the energy, and then we'll go back to Q&As.
Hiya. Thanks, David and Colette. That was riveting stuff. Before I go into energy, just a couple of things I want to add. BlackRock isn't one company; it's a conglomerate, and they're really worth looking into to see what they do and where their assets come from.
Sorry, Izzy, can you speak a little bit louder?
I have a problem with this every time. You tell me how to hold a mic and I never do it. I need to splinter some of my arm. BlackRock also bought Edinburgh Airport. So they're in charge of that. They're part of the Freeport, the fourth Freeport. And as Colette said, they're into solar farms now. The other company that David talked about was, and I'll never get this right, so it's Planeteer or something like that. It's Planeteer?
Palantir.
That's the one. Say it again, louder.
Palantir.
Ah, thank you. They have...
Can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
Very briefly, Palantir,
Yes.
they are now embedded in the British police force,
Okay.
the military of defence, and also, of course, the NHS.
Yeah. I want to really just talk about the NHS because they have got all our medical records. And the reason they have got our medical records is because they want to target private healthcare to whoever needs it. That's where they're going. You'll probably hear on the media just now, especially radio, that you'll hear all these adverts for private health insurance. That's where this is coming from. They're targeting it. They want you to sign up for that. And it's very cheap just now, £20 a month or something. Look into that. But the biggest thing I want to guide you to is go to YouTube, and there's a video in there. It's called The Great NHS Heist. I've been sharing it on social media for 10 years, and it's fascinating. It's about an hour and a half, but there's a bigger one, 2 hours, over 2 hours. See what's happening to our NHS, and it's happened since Thatcher's era, but where we're at now is the end game, and the end game is to privatise the NHS. So they're doing that in England. They're nearly there in England, but that'll have a knock-on effect, as Colette said, for our NHS, because we get a pro rata share, and if they're not paying for if our NHS is England, we won't get the funds here. So really have a look, and that's something we need to fight. So that's enough of that wee thing. Energy. Now we've been asked a couple of times why you're talking about Freeports, why are you talking about energy? And my answer to that is energy runs through the Freeports. And initially we were talking about what the Freeport meant and what entailed taxes and our land and all the rest of it, and annexing part of Scotland. From Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, Peterhead or St Fergus, a lot of the oil and gas comes in to the terminals here, comes right through the heart of Scotland into Grangemouth, which is a part of Fourth Freeport. From there it gets, it is still, the oil's getting refined there for now until Grangemouth shuts. But what they're doing at the moment is they've got a terminal that sits on the Firth of Forth that takes the tankers, takes it out of, I'm not doing this very well, I'm still at it. It takes the oil and gas out of Scotland. But when the Grangemouth shuts, then it'll bypass Scotland altogether. It'll go under the sea and right into England, and we won't know how much has been generated. We won't know how much is our share of the profits. We get currently about 10%. We should be getting it all, but that's another story. So that's why we want to cover energy. We also know that in the economic zones and in the Freeports, the wind energy is going through these areas too. One of the things about talked about tax havens, one of the things about these is oil and gas and other assets can go through the Freeports to another Freeport to another Freeport without paying tax. Who knows how much is going through each one? It's the tax havens are areas of corruption, widespread corruption. It happens in all of them across the world, and it's going to happen in Scotland and across the UK as well. So from that, I want to go on to this green energy that we've talked about. We all know about the onshore wind farms. They've been in Scotland for decades now. That kind of stopped a wee while when I think it was David Cameron, when Alex Salmond he kind of stopped the funding for us to carry on with that. Then it went to offshore, and that was accelerated. All offshore wind farms have to go through the Crown Office in Scotland for licences, and they have been given the licences, the companies have been given the licences to explore and erect these wind farms on the seabed, our seabed, it was a reverse auction, so they got them for the minimum price, which is absolutely bizarre. So hundreds of millions rather than hundreds of thousands of millions. So that's how that started. We've got maps and all sorts around here. Scotland's seabed is covered in wind farms, from Shetland right down to the borders, and there's a few on the west coast, not so much because of the nuclear sites, the Faslane and all that, so that's got to be kept clear for the MOD. But there are still some on the west coast. You'll see there's various bits there. Much of that wind is piped directly to England to connect to the grid. What comes in Scotland then goes to piped down to England. So it kind of bounces off, it connects to our, oh God, I'm terrible with names, what are they called?
National grid.
There's local grids in Scotland that kind of go then connect to the national grid in England. What we're also getting, I'll tell you on it. And that's how the pilot, the floating wind farms in Scotland. I've got a list here if you want to see them. There's a whole list of floating wind farms around Scotland now. One of the biggest wind farms, well, the biggest onshore wind farm is in Glasgow, but the biggest offshore wind farm is off the Moray coast. I have to put my glasses on for this bit. Wait a minute, I've lost the plot. There's three up there off Moray coast, but the one that's just gone online now will generate enough energy for half of Scotland's households. And we have got thousands of these things round about in our land and on our sea. Why are the electric grids planning to cover our land with enormous wind turbines when we will generate more than enough onshore and with the wind farms we've got already? Our whole landscape is going to be destroyed by wind farms, and wind farms need somewhere to store the energy when the wind doesn't blow. So we'll have base units which are battery energy storage systems, and they're right across our land as well, in every community. Most of them are close to rural, close to urban sites, and some of them are even next to schools. Alan will tell you about the one that they're planning in Dundee. Go on.
Yeah, in Dundee there's an area.
Get a microphone, sorry.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, in Dundee they've just applied for planning permission to build a battery storage unit right next to a school that has just been built. The school itself has been built on a floodplain, and this battery storage unit will also be built on a floodplain. One that has been a floodplain for many, many years, since I was a bairn, that has been flooded. so it's well known and nothing's been done to stop it. But it's right next door to a school.
So somebody should make that make sense, because we can't make sense of it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, wait, Mike.
No, you do. Tell everybody else.
I just want to ask a question. As far as I'm aware, and I might be wrong because I'm always wrong, the battery banks are actually quite toxic. Does anyone know about that?
Thanks. Back to where I was. There's another one, and 5 going to be built on a floodplain as well. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely nonsense. So we've talked about the wind farms. Solar panels. Now, they know I'm in a meeting today. Anyway, solar panels, solar farms are being built across Scotland as well. They will also connect to these battery storage units. They're taking up arable land, and some of them are the size of 10 football pitches. Some of them they're huge. And a beggar's belief, I mean, the amount of energy that we create in Scotland is obscene, and most of it's going, well, all of it's going to England to connect to the grid. But a lot of that has been taken down to England, and it'll be exported. And how much is Scotland and how much are everybody here going to profit from that? We're not. It's absolutely ludicrous. So the battery storage units, there's two things. There's the battery storage systems, which are what you'd say normal size for these battery storage. They're quite big units, but I think we might have some images of them here. I've got some on my phone if you want to see them. But then there's battery storage facilities, which are several of these units built together, so that they're multiplied. Jen just asked about toxicity. We know that they emit toxic fumes. They are cooled by generators all around the units. But these systems, most of them are lithium, and they can catch fire, and they're very, very difficult to put out. The fumes from that go into the atmosphere, and they're toxic too. I could talk for ages about all this, but there's other stuff I want to cover, but we have got loads of literature, like I said, about these things, and we'll take questions afterwards. The battery storage units, they are, like I said, they're built to store energy when the wind doesn't blow, but generally they have capacity just for 2 hours. So it's not logical, and that's why they need so many, because once you use them, 2 hours they're dry, so they put in another one and they run dry, and then another one and another one. It's kind of nonsense. So apart from the offshore wind farms, the onshore wind farms, oil and gas that we still will have to use, and we'll still have to use that for a considerable time. We have got solar farms, and we also have been using hydropower for many years, many decades even, and we are innovators in tidal power. We've got power coming out of our ears, but none of us, I mean, how many of you are in fuel poverty over the winter? It's crazy. We can't afford to heat our homes, and we've got power everywhere across our land. I'm just about to finish, because I'll take questions. I will take questions, because I'm going to hand the mic out to everybody that's here. So, one of the things that's a real problem is, one of the things that we've been talking about is, one of Scotland's unique selling points is our landscapes and our scenery. That's what tourists come to Scotland for. And that has been covered by these pylons, these battery storage things, the solar panels. Why? Why is our government agreeing to this? Why are they destroying our country for energy that surplus energy that we're never going to use in our country? I know we can't sell it. The English government or the British government is selling it at the moment. But why we should be protesting this? This is one of the things that we're informing with our meetings, is because we shouldn't be putting up with this. We really should not put up with this. It's a travesty. It really is. I'm going to finish on that and open up for questions. Thank you very much.
Before we go to questions, could I just put one point, talk about privatisation? Something that we've been discussing in the team that came to light to me quite recently, but we know about a lot of our ports and harbours that have been privately owned, like Peel Ports and Glasgow Ports, etc. And they basically let them go to rack and ruin. They haven't invested any money into them. They're getting used and they're basically dry docks. There's no innovation. There's no jobs going in. They're just lying there dormant, doing absolutely nothing, where they could have been doing an awful lot for Scotland and the people of Scotland. But one thing came to light to me, and I just want to let people know this, just to give you an idea of how bad things actually are getting, if you didn't think things were bad enough with everything that we've spoke about so far regarding privatisation in all the different areas, whether it's Freeports, the special economic zones, or now the renewable energy. And again, as I say, they are all owned by private companies. It's not publicly owned. We should be having a national energy company, and we should be seeing the benefit. But one thing came to light when we talk about, everybody likes to moan about our ferries here in Scotland. One thing came to light regarding the ports and the harbours is that Calmac ferries, when they're due their maintenance, repairs, etc., they actually get shipped down to Ellesmere Port in Liverpool, a free port. They get taken down there, so they travel the distance down to Liverpool, they get their maintenance done down there, and then they've got to travel back up to Scotland. So one, you've got the energy used to get them down there. It's the people in Ellesmere Port, but it's a free port, so we don't know the employment status of the people that are actually working there. But they're getting the jobs to actually maintain our ferries, and then the time to actually come back up to Scotland. The people in Scotland should be doing those kinds of jobs, and this is what's actually getting done behind our backs that people don't actually know. So the likes of ourselves and other campaigning groups, you know, we're really trying to get the word out, and it's really up to now everybody else, because we're not getting the social media, we're not getting the mainstream media, as David rightly said. You know, the media are not covering this properly like they should be. They probably will in a few years' time, but that'll be too late. That'll be too late. The damage will already be done. It's already been done. So let's just think about how we can actually move this forward and actually make our elected representatives accountable for exactly what's happening here in Scotland. And I'll go on to Q&As now.
Can I say one thing?
Yep.
Do people know that Freeports in Scotland is owned by a parent company, and it's called Otter Ports Limited. Otter Ports Limited, the director of that is Lord Smith of Kelvin in Scotland, and he did not declare this in the Register of Interest, that Otter Ports is registered in the Cayman Islands, which is a notorious tax haven. So go and knock on his door and say, what the hell are you doing?
Privatization. Thanks, David.
I've just got two questions. The first one is, in 1997, Tony Blair brought in PFI. Now, councils in Scotland took out loans of £5 billion. Those repayments were £30 billion. So councils are actually paying £1 billion a year of a council tax money to repay these. At the end of these repayments, the buildings do not belong to local authority, or in hospital cases the NHS. A lot of these are coming to the end of their time. What is to stop these SEZ corporations from actually putting in compulsory purchase orders, buying these properties at dirt cheap prices, renegotiating the payments for the use of them, and ripping off the taxpayer again? The second question is regarding the Freeports and the lack of regulations and custom checks. Scotland has a major problem of drugs. What is the safeguards of stopping these Freeports from being used for drugs and people smuggling?
I'm going to ask David. Oh, there's I'm going to ask David because he's nodding along with that, and then I'm going to come back with the Freeports and the smuggling.
The whole point of deregulated Freeports is to not stop drugs, arms, weapons, human trafficking, stolen art, private banking, tax evasion, environmental pollution. That's the whole point of deregulation in Freeports. That's why you had Brexit, was to get away from the EU's regulations, right? And nothing is going to stop companies like BlackRock and Blackstone from buying up these buildings in Scotland that have, like the guy said, have reached the end of their time on the cheap. That is their business. That is what they do. This is the whole incursion into the public sector. This is to asset strip everything, because what is happening goes against what we call democracy. You are not part of the decisions that lead to that. So this is basically a corporate coup where the government has invited over 700 lobbyists representing these tons of corporations who are given carte blanche to come in, completely hollow out big government, and like I say, distribute their power across these zones. That's the whole thing. You take a big problem and you break it down. The zones themselves, they've been described as it'll make things easier for companies to manage under what they call localized freedoms. But those kind of sort of semi-friendly terms, localized freedoms, implying the local people have a say in this, is complete bullshit. They are absolutely lying to you on every front. That's it.
Thank you. No, they've covered it all.
Hello. Back in 1970, 1980, there was a big inquiry into the effects that these big electric pylons were having on health, and it was discovered, and it has been reported in the medical records, that they in fact caused leukemia in children, and it was a very high percentage, and I think there was quite a lot of laws brought in so that they were not allowed by residential areas and schools and things like that. So that might be worth your while looking into that.
Yeah, that's true. But what these zones do is they deregulate, so they do not have to comply with the laws of the land. They're out with our laws. It's ludicrous, but if that's what's actually happening. Yeah, I know.
We have feet.
Yes, we do. Yeah. Here's the thing, though. All this is done, as we've talked about already. All this has been done under the radar. And it was only when the fourth Freeport, there were a few of us got sight of that in Scotland. I mean, I think England was well ahead of us in this. And we were outraged, and we just wanted to use our feet and, protest and whatever. But there wasn't enough of us who knew about it. So that's why we started the group that we're in, and taking us around this country, because people don't know about them. And I can see from your faces in here, some of you know none of this. And that's what is. David also talked about freedom of information. When we first started, we asked the governments and local authorities for information, and most of it was heavily redacted. You couldn't read it because most of it was redacted. It's crazy. Oh.
Sorry, do you want us to carry on? Do you want
Mine's a follow-on.
Can I?
This lady's.
Just a quick thing. It's not entirely true that the media doesn't pick up on this. And even though we are not allowed, Scotland is not allowed a public broadcaster, we do have an extensive Scottish independent media. Okay? It's not just Independence Live. No, just important. It's also the Scotland Channel, Broadcasting Scotland, SOSA, IndyCar, thingamajig, and all these people, right? Every Yes Group. So I wanted to say that apart from us travelling the country and we really do try to get every single event for Indy. It's really important that people form speeches yourselves, just one speech at a time, and get it out on social media, because we are so stretched that we can't do this. And it is vital that these things in these, what's happening today, gets out to people, because we try to get it out. But guys, get filming. Get the individual speeches, because we do the whole event, and people sometimes don't wait till the important parts. Get snippets of speeches and get it out on every single social media. That's all I have to say.
Just for everybody's attention, an example of the danger of battery storages is the recent fire in Ayrshire of a battery recycling business for the second time in 12 months. And could I ask, Salvo and Liberation have begun the process at the UN requesting recognition as a non-self-governing territory. Will that enable Scotland to address the issues regarding Freeports and their corporations?
Can I just say, I'm going to address that at the end of the meeting. There's a bit of good information, I suppose. But I want to hear all your comments first. Thanks.
Yes, my question relates to the lady who asked the question about overhead power lines and health. And the answer from the table suddenly went on to Freeports and health and safety in Freeports. Can I ask what the connection with overhead power lines and the health implication and Freeports is, please?
Well, as I said, a lot of these are already now in the Freeport and Special Economic Zone areas which are deregulated. So again, like everything else at the present moment, is actually trying to gather data. The lady rightly said about in the 1970s, it takes a lot of time to have information gathering. As I said, even trying to get the unemployment rates, poverty rates, even trying to find the information regarding the job opportunities for the Special Economic Zone here in Aberdeenshire, in the North East. The information isn't that transparent. It is actually very difficult to find, and we spend an awful lot of time. So the implications of these pylons, the wind turbines, even the wind turbines with the biodiversity for our wildlife, our birds, etc., that's actually not going to come to fruition for quite some time. And that's what I said earlier on. This is when things are going to be too late, because the damage is already going to be done. Now, if you think about the wind turbines that we've got here, we've got over 4,000 wind turbines here in Scotland alone, and there's still more to come. There's still more in the planning. There's still more to be constructed. So we are absolutely jam-packed of wind turbines, and they've got a 20 to 25 year, if they're well looked after, operational time span. But once they're done and their work life is gone, they're then just put into land to rot. They can't be reused, they're not reusable. So all the turbines that go round with the wind, they just lie in a turbine graveyard, as they call it. They can't be used again, they can't be recycled, etc.
They can.
Well, we've been told they can't. No, they can't.
You're wrong. All the steel is recycled.
Okay.
Can you have the mic? All the steel can be recycled. The blades, up until fairly recently, for the old wind farms in the likes of America, yes, they couldn't be, but there are now recycling facilities in the UK and abroad which can recycle all these blades. Some have been turned into bicycle shelters in towns and all sorts of things. So to say that they all go into a graveyard is factually incorrect.
Well, I'm glad.
Sorry, who is speaking at the moment? Yourself, Lloyd?
Beg your pardon?
I said, could you introduce yourself, your name and which...
Yes, surely. My name is Hugh Martin. I'm a member of a local community council in the local area. I'm not speaking on behalf of the community council. I'm speaking on my own behalf. But in our area, about 5 miles west of here, we are getting a 500-acre farm taken over for an SSEN substation. We've got 2 battery energy storage systems being planned, more than 10 times the size of the one that's been planned in Dundee. We have lots of power lines coming in, so we have a huge interest in it. But what is vitally important when we're campaigning is that we are factually correct in what is said. And I've heard an awful lot here which is not factually correct. Things like BlackRock owning Edinburgh Airport. That's not true. BlackRock is a shareholder in the parent company of the company that owns Edinburgh Airport, but it's not the owner. So just be careful about what is being said. You have to be factually correct, otherwise you'll just be ripped apart.
Are you in favour of the wind farm and the storage facilities that have been erected around in that farm?
Sorry, say again?
Are you in favour of the...
Absolutely not. And we were given a mandate by our residents in the local area to object to it. And we have employed professional consultants to argue our case.
What is your case, by the way?
Our case is it's not needed.
It's not
Yeah,
needed.
It's not needed.
Yeah.
We are. I mean, I'm with you. And again, I've come here. This is the first time I've never heard of your organisation before.
Mm-hmm.
I've come here. I've heard about Freeports, which again, there seems to be a lot of misinformation about Freeports, about special economic zones, and now we're on to wind turbines. There's such a different matter of subjects being discussed here, and I would suggest you focus on one.
Yeah,
You know.
we've been told that before. We will focus on where our research takes us. Thanks, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to say that Freeports aren't covered by health and safety and they're totally deregulated, again, factually incorrect.
We have asked these questions. We have asked these questions. We've asked councillors within these zones. We've had two actually meetings in Inverness. We've asked all the local authorities up there, the councillors to come, MPs and MSPs. None of them. In fact, we had 3 councillors. None of them knew anything. We've had 3 meetings down within the 4th Freeport area, and we haven't had any results from the elected reps there. The information blackout is what we have to do our own research, and it's what we find, that's what we talk about. Whether it's factual or not, that's what we find, and that's all we can talk about. We can't talk about what the councillors are telling us, because they tell us nothing.
Yeah, but you just have to go onto the government websites to see what the regulations are. The regulations that Michael Gove talked about when these Freeports were put into place was they are deregulated zones. Not as far as health and safety is concerned.
Maybe you should listen to what happened in the committee meetings in Westminster. Really.
I just want to say something, because we've been involved as Independence Live with this whole initiative. There is not information forthcoming, and it is not really fair. And if anyone wants to have more correct information, you're more than willing to get involved, of course. But this information is not forthcoming. These corporations involved are not transparent. So if somebody says BlackRock, that's all we know at this stage. And this is a very valuable initiative, and it's the only one that's giving people information. So I think when we criticize, let's rather get involved and share your knowledge, which is what we are doing. We're even working with the gentleman on the screen, which is largely, as far as I can see, to do with England. And everybody's on the same page. So let's be careful how we dismiss these people who are working really hard to get information out. And this information is not just on government websites. It's not that easy. It is very, very not transparent.
David, do you want to come in as well? Because obviously... All right, okay. Hold on a wee second, we'll give the councillor.
Yes, just to give you a bit of information, sometimes going to the councillor isn't always the only way to get information. I can only speak from Aberdeen City Council. If you have a question, we have a customer feedback team. Now you can reach that by 2 methods. One is by writing to it yourself, and the other way is if you can get one of the local councillors to do it on your behalf. And that's maybe a way to try and get yourself some information that you're not getting back at the moment.
We're in So yeah, so then the last Sunday, I think it's the last Sunday in July the 27th, we're going to be in Aberdeen. David, are you wanting to come in regarding any information that you're actually finding in all the research that you've been doing over the 5+ years that you've been doing research into Freeports?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of critique about all the zones, that they all have different approaches to what is either regulation or deregulation. So I can only give certain examples, which doesn't count for the entirety of all the zones. They've each got different rules and regulations, and this is what makes it very, very complicated. So any information I impart, I absolutely research every aspect of it from obviously all my sources, and yeah, that's all I can say. But to say that Freeports are all deregulated, or okay, I agree with the gentleman that that is not essentially the case, but there are all these different, I mean, there are so many of these zones and so many councils and so many interests involved that you have to take each one and, you know, really examine exactly the kind of deregulatory framework that is embedded in them. And that's going to, like I said, it's going to be different for every single zone.
Could I just go back on the point that you made earlier on about the 70s and 80s when the report was done on the pylons? That report was done by scientists looking at the whole issue of this. There's been a new report done, funded by the industry, which has disproven that. Now, there's an old saying, follow the money, because reports are now being brought in that are dishonest and used to manipulate the system.
And the narrative is controlled by government.
Hello, I'll introduce myself. My name's Eileen Stiles. I was on the very first, I was asked to help to organise a community council. That was 50 years ago. And it was during this time that I actually was working with, prior to this time, I was working with Rowett Institute, and we were doing, I was recording the records. Hello. The radioactivity. Okay. So I was actually involved in some of the research. But we were speaking more to my interest here, how to get people involved and spread the word. I learned at the very first part of the community council organising, we couldn't get people, we couldn't get footfall. So somebody came up with a bright idea. Tell you what, we'll put on a show and we'll ask the kids that go to dancing and they can come and give a show. With that you get the parents, the aunties, the uncles and everybody. You got the footfall. If you were to do that techniques, you would get a lot more people coming to your meetings.
Yes, you're right. We put on our first meeting in August 23 in Inverness, and we had, I think, 20 people, something like this. And our second meeting we had in the same venue in Inverness, it was full. It was standing room only in the second one.
Why?
Because people talked about it. People talked about the first meeting we had. It got the information got out, and social media, because we were all over social media at that time, and they wanted to come and hear what I had to say. The people that were there told people, and it was impressive actually. The second one. This is quite a small crowd for us. We generally speak to 50, 60 to up to 100 people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's a shame because
Yeah.
I'm with the community council and Peterhead, I'm one of their members.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, you're all here and you'll tell other people, I would imagine, and ask questions and do your own research perhaps, speak to your own councillors and elected members. Can I just say one more thing? There's something I didn't say actually. I've got a map here, Scotland, and the dark areas is where all the wind turbines are onshore. Scotland has at the moment, and these numbers change all the time, but currently, according to this, Scotland has 4,464 turbines on land. England has 1,999. That's just a fact. I'm not going to make any other comment on that. What time have we got? Yeah, we've got 10 minutes, so any more questions?
Hi, I'm just part of the Salvo Northeast team. So we'd come up to sort of promote the event and sort of hand out flyers and things, and I was quite disappointed. Folk generally, there wasn't a huge amount of interest because folk could see it as an opportunity for job creation and improvements in the economy in the area. So, not a big turnout, but going by, speaking to individuals, in Peterhead, I didn't feel that there was, much interest because folk could only see the benefits, from the things that were going to be happening.
Could I then ask, in that situation when you were talking to people, could they give you examples of exactly what the benefits were from the special economic zones? Because they're saying that they were approving of them, but could they give an example to you exactly how it was going to benefit the Peterhead or the local community in the local surrounding areas or themselves and their households?
Job creation was one. Can you job creation was the one that seemed to stand out. It was going to benefit the area because of jobs and things like the funding. It was going to be coming into the area as well. So that was kind of the consensus that we were getting from just having sort of conversations with people.
Regarding job creations, David and Colette have spoken about that. What is projected and what actually happens is two very different figures.
Can I just quickly ask something? Do you think it would help if when we were giving out leaflets, we could say this is what's promised, but this is what was promised to Teesside, for example, and this is what they got?
Again, I'm having a bit of difficulty here because we're mixing up, your Freeports, special economic zones, and renewable energy, and everybody's talking about different things here. My presence here is predicated on the fact that in the northeast roundabout here, we're going to be hit with enormous amounts of hardware at huge cost. We're talking in the region of something like, I think it's £60 billion a year is going to be spent on this. Now, how much would that go towards the health service or education or whatever? That's one of the reasons why I'm dead against it. The other point that really has to be made is that one of the reasons that people aren't showing or aren't being seen to be showing much interest is because they think it's all a done deal. The deal has been done. You've got Scottish government pushing green energy. You've got the British government pushing green energy, and statements like, oh, all this energy is going to be sent down to England, but in fact we're going to be importing energy from England when the wind stops. So we'll be bringing in nuclear energy, which personally I'm for, but it's the fact that people think it's a done deal. And you've got to keep pushing, And as far as the renewable energy is concerned, don't start mixing up SEZs and Freeports and things like that. Stick to your primary agenda item. That's my advice. And you think I'm being critical? I'm not. I'm trying to actually, point you in directions that might help you.
Yeah,
Hope this works. You've obviously done lots and lots of work on this subject in this area. So how would it be if you were to write a newsletter or write a piece and give it to the Salvo North East team and they can promote it?
I have written to the press, I've written to MPs, MSPs, etc. Well, I don't know enough about Salvo and what their primary agenda is. So if it's political, I'm
non-political. We are non-political. If
you're not promoting independence and all that sort of stuff.
We are Freeports. We are Freeports campaign team.
Right. So that's nothing to do with renewable energy around.
But as Izzy already explained earlier on, that it is in conjunction with because they are going through Freeports and special economic zones, and it's the economic impact that we have that we're not seeing the benefit of them.
Sorry, what are going through Freeports?
The energy, the renewable energy, the pipelines are going through onshore and offshore are actually going through Freeports.
Well, Peterhead's not a Freeport.
It's in the special economic zone.
Which is tied to.
It's tied to.
Yeah, but it just happens to be going through. It's not. It's got influence by the special economic zone at all.
Can I say something on that?
There was a lady who mentioned something, and it's really important. Okay, I'm going to be very brief. The reason why there is apathy about this is because it's not on the BBC. It's not in the newspapers. It's been kept very secret and not transparent, which is exactly why, if you're not filming now, today, which I understand that you're not, it's not your fault, just go on to Independence Live and take clips from the footage, get individual speeches that's sharp and punchy, and get it out there on social media, because people are only apathetic because they don't understand how serious it is. And I will say that as Independence Live, we've been at all of these meetings, and even I'm learning things, and I'm sure other people are, that you didn't know before. This is absolutely horrendous. Okay.
Can I address your point, sir? Yeah, there are various groups around Scotland who are talking about the energy. We started our group, it's about Freeports and SEZs. This Peterhead is an SEZ, it's a special economic zone. The energy comes in through St Fergus, it comes through Aberdeen, which is all part of the North East SEZ. It travels down to Fife through the fourth Freeport and gets taken offshore then. Not all of it, some of it goes directly pipelined under the water. But a lot of it comes onshore through the SEZ in North East Fife, comes in North East Scotland, and then comes through to the Freeport in Fife. So it is important. It's part of what we're looking at. The reason we're talking about energy up here is because that is what's important up here. When you look at this, the energy, the map out that's just wind farms in the North East Scotland here. It's enormous. And we have travelled, and we will be travelling Scotland. We've got meetings every month this year. Not just within the Freeport, not just within the SEZ, because these zones, economic investment zones, are all over Scotland. We're going to Dumfries, we're going to Helensburgh, we're going to Leith, we're going to Lanarkshire. We've got 10 public meetings this year. We also do rallies and stuff in public meetings. So the reason we're up here and talking about energy is because that's what's important up in the northeast of Scotland. That is what this is all about up here. And it comes from here and it goes directly down. We don't just talk about this when we're talking within Leith, and we did one in Fife last month. That's about the Freeports. When we're going to Inverness in October, that's about the Cromarty Freeport. But we cover all things because it's all linked. And energy is the biggest factor that links it all. It really is.
Can I just address your what's your name again? Hugh. Can I address your issue about the connection between or try to, because it is so complicated, between the Freeport and the special economic zones. David, if you can correct me if I'm wrong here, if a company sets up in the Freeport zone, it receives the benefits of setting up there, the tax benefits and so forth. They are then entitled to operate within the special enterprise zone and receive the same benefits from government and council. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's the Freeport is housed inside the much larger zone. You can see that if you look at the maps. So I guess whatever industry is interested in setting up in a Freeport will receive the Freeport allocated funding. But, you know, outside of that, in the special economic zone, there is a separate funding, which is, you know, the 160 million pot.
Yeah. Yeah. So they get the benefits of both. And that allows them to be interconnected.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at a company like Peel Group,
yeah,
they've got tons of kind of subsidiary, you know, companies, but they've also got lots of expansionist interests. You know, that you're talking about a company that really wants to take on board public infrastructure as much as it is involved in, say, import and export or something like that in a Freeport.
And we can look at Ardrossan. Peelport own Ardrossan, and Ardrossan is not able to take the Glen Sannox.
Right.
And they are requesting that the government buys out Ardrossan, while they have taken the profits for the last 30 or 40 years. Now's the time that it requires investment to allow the public infrastructure of the Calmac ferry to dock there. They're handing it back to the government.
Okay, that's 3:30. Is there anybody else that's got any questions very quickly before we hand over to Len to end the meeting?
Yes, again. I'm involved in a meeting that's going on tomorrow afternoon. It's a Zoom meeting. It's with Scottish Power and Green Power. Has anybody heard of it? Are they going to be involved? Well, it might be interesting to find out what they've got. I printed off quite a lot of the paperwork which I gave to Lee, so if you want you can look into it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Just very quickly before I hand over to Len to round up today, I just want to say if anybody wants to send us information. David was saying earlier on about networking, and it is very important that we do network. We've been networking with some different campaigners, especially even in Helensburgh, where the Flamingo land, and giving them information about the special economic zone that lies within that part of the land regarding the Flamingo land project. So we do try and engage and network as much as we possibly can. So if anybody's got any information that they want to send to us so that we have that information, because again, we spend every single day of the week, and I mean every single day of the week, researching different aspects of all of this, just like David does. But if you've got any information that you want to send us, our email address is very simple. It's freeports@salvo.scot. So freeports@salvo.scot. And we're more than happy to hear from you, and thank you for that information. We'll get that off for Lee. So I would like to thank David for coming along today, and Izzy for speaking as well, and I'll pass you over to Len.
Izzy, that was the good news you were going to give us.
Oh, right.
Oh. We need some good news.
Exactly.
Thanks, Nick.
No.
No, there's all the corporations within Freeports were issued with a letter before they went live to tell them that they had actually no right to annex our land. And if we do actually take this forward, and I know the gentleman there isn't interested in independence, but 66% or so of Scots are, we will challenge the fact that they have annexed their land when we regain independence, so it shouldn't stand.
Get up, Paul.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David. Good to see you again.
Thank you,
Look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, I hope so.
Keep up the week. I love everything that comes through. David publishes daily, and I really do mean daily, on X, Substack, and Blue Sky. So you can follow David on all those platforms. He's a mine of information.
One important thing.
Okay, David, you've got an offer to appear on Independence Live.
Oh, great.
If you want. So if you want, you can get in touch with Independence Live to do a show.
Okay.
She's waving at you. I don't know if you know. You probably can't see her. But please get.
One little bit of news.
Yes.
The Financial Times are going to interview me on Wednesday about Freeports and special economic zones.
Right. Did you hear that? The Financial Times are going to interview David on Wednesday about Freeports. Great. We'll look forward to seeing that. Excellent. Well, that's what I'm trying to find out. Right. Before you all rush off, if you've all got raffle tickets, we're going to do the draw. Now, hold back your excitement now. It's coming. It's done. Oh, right. So what do they do? Check. Okay. Check your tickets on the way out. Say, what?
Recording stop.
Bye. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Hey, David. Thank you. Good. Thanks for coming. All the best. Cheers. Thanks very much. And thank you all for coming too. Really appreciate it. I hope it's helped. Please get in touch, as you said, with the Freeport group or the Salvo North East group if you've got any questions at any time. Dave's journey.
This yours, or is it a furry bit in it? That's yours.
That's yours. I'm going to retrieve the other two.
Well, there's only another one. The orange tip.
Two for this place.
Aye, it's very confusing.
Yes. I'm going to find them. So they can
So there was a ring. Sorry. So much information. If you want to go into the minutes line, so many of the speakers should without the blocks and so get out there and get this information. To collect local from ISP, from and to